Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and today is the day that we officially have our very first Jurassic World Dominion figure to review. A very exciting day if you ask me. Been waiting a long time for this line to start to show up, and officially this one has, as far as the 5-inch basic figures, at my local Aldi store, and they have the Wave, which if you actually look at the back here, you can see the different figures in the Wave. You've got Velociraptor Blue, the Giganotosaurus, and the Therizinosaurus. Unfortunately, mine did not have the Therizinosaurus. I'm going to have to look at some other Aldis later today, see if I can find that one. But we do have the Giganotosaurus, which is a very exciting one here to take a look at. You can see as far as the box art goes, you've got a really nice Jurassic World Dominion logo right there, and again, the species title. And then, of course, a nice little window area where we can get a sneak peek of our Giganotosaurus. So let's go ahead, pop this open, and check out our very first Jurassic World Dominion figure. And here is our little Giganotosaurus, and he is absolutely adorable right here before us. And you can see that, as usual, when it comes to these smaller 5-inch basic figures, we have all the usual issues when it comes to the proportions of the figure. The head's huge, the feet are huge, tail's short. I think it's pretty typical of this figure to actually have, the obvious proportions a bit off. That's just how they always have been. But I think he actually looks really quite nice for being, one of the 5-inch basic figures that usually they're really quite off as far as the proportions. And although this one certainly is, I feel like it's not quite as bad as some of the ones that we've had in the past. And it definitely looks like a pretty fun figure, so let's go ahead and jump straight to a closer look at it right now. So starting up here at the head sculpt of our Giganotosaurus, you can see some pretty nice detailing on the head sculpt. The sculpting of the actual skin texture is actually really nicely done, but I usually don't expect anything less. When it comes to a Mattel release, they usually do a good job as far as sculpting out all of the fine detail, and you can definitely see some very nice, very fine detail on the Giganotosaurus. Again, he's super small, so you're not going to have an opportunity to see some really large scales or anything, although we have clusters of kind of ridges and osteoderms and stuff up there above the eye that run along the top of the head. But you can also see that the teeth are sculpted out very nicely. The mouth is sculpted in a closed position, as you always find when it comes to these 5-inch basics. But I think the teeth do look really quite nice. We have some coloration here for the face, with, of course, the majority being the nice greenish tone of the Giganotosaurus. And then you have some blacks that kind of just splotch all around the eye and then leak down into the palate. Even up here in the nostril area, you can see more of that. You have a green for the eye itself, a nice light green, and a black pupil, I think, but either way, it could be just the same black color that we have there, or it could be a legit black pupil. It's really hard to tell, but it's not like it really matters. Whoa, the eye is so off on this side. In fact, the eye, I don't even know if you can even consider the eye existing over here. So the Giganotosaurus is almost like the Battle at Big Rock Allosaurus now, and has an injured eye as far as this one goes. Luckily, I actually bought 2 of these. There were a few there, so I grabbed 2 because I was intending on repainting one, but the other one has a botched eye on this side, so unfortunately, I don't know that there is a good one of this out here in my area. So it's definitely sad to see that the quality control issues continue when it comes to the Mattel figures, because that right there is probably the worst I've seen when it comes to any figure I've purchased yet. And of course, it would be the very first Dominion figure. Not a good sign for this line, guys, but hopefully it'll be okay. Maybe it's just the 5-inch basics that we're going to deal with this on. But again, detail-wise, I think the head looks really nice. The head sculpt overall looks pretty good. And then as we lead up here to the top of the head, you can see some more really nice skin texture. You start to see the ridges pick up before becoming pretty big. You can see they kind of extend up a little bit here and have a little area of larger ridges before kind of transitioning back down to some smaller ones, before transitioning back to some really big ones here in the back. I think a lot of people think that the Giganotosaurus kind of has a hump, and I don't believe that it does have a hump. I feel like it just looks like the ridges there are larger than they are in other places, kind of making it appear as though it has a hump, almost making it have a bit of a concavenator type of a look, but I don't think actually is meant to have a hump, but who knows, I could be wrong. Regardless, again, you can see the ridges here running along the back look really cool, and then we have the black coloration that runs along the back here, starts right there in the middle of the head as far as this coloration on the top, and then stops before we reach the tail, of course. We also have some more really nice skin texture, a lot of really nice creasing and wrinkling there running down the neck. You can kind of even see a little bit of tensing in the neck. The shoulder blade is elaborated pretty nicely there in the skin. You've got a nice looking arm sculpt for our Giganotosaurus. Unfortunately, no nail paint, but that's very, very common, especially when it comes to the 5-inch basics, because they are exactly that, basic. And then you can see here in the stomach region, you can get a pretty good idea of the rib cage a little bit right there, as well as some nice looking skin detail, kind of like some skin wrinkles and stuff down there. You've got the hip bones sort of elaborated right here as we move back a little bit further. A lot of really nice kind of cracks and crevices in the skin texture here as you move down the thigh. You've also got some very nice muscle definition in the thigh and the calf as you move down into the foot. Of course, the foot sculpt is a bit too big, as they usually are when it comes to these 5-inch basics. They're usually really off, and you can see that although the foot sculpt is a bit bigger, it's an absolutely gorgeous looking foot sculpt. Really nice scoots down the toes, very nicely sculpted out nails, and you also have the dew claw over there. That actually might be one of the nicest 5-inch basic figures foot sculpts I think I've seen. And then we lead out the length of the tail, and you can see that we've got a very nice curve in the tail, more of those ridges and that armored kind of a look running along the back of our Giganotosaurus as you lead out the length of the tail, and it comes out, kind of goes up a little bit before heading in a downward position. And then over here, you're really not going to see too much difference, especially on a figure like this, because it's basically just an articulated figure that you can pose yourself. So the only real difference that you see over here compared to the initial side is the fact that the legs are in a different position. The leg over here is leading, the leg on the opposing side is trailing. Not really too much difference over here other than that, except for the fact that the eye looks way better. But you can see the coloration looks exactly the same, very precise as far as the way it's applied compared to the other side. No coloration out there under the tail at all, except for the speckling. We do have a speckling on the figure. It's actually kind of like a reddish brown sort of speckling. You can really see it there in the thigh region of the Giganotosaurus, but the underside does as well sport some pretty fun detail. Nice detailing here in the throat, like that's actually really nice. But you can see the skin texture and everything as we run along the underside also looks really quite nice. Even the undersides of the feet are very nicely sculpted. So when it comes to an awesome 5-inch basic figure, this is definitely one of the nicest ones I think they've released. Unfortunately, the eye paint on mine is awful, but the overall figure is definitely a very nice sculpt with some okay, I guess, paint application. As far as articulation on our figure goes, we have articulation in the arms, of course, both arms, which allow you to have the arms in more of a natural position closer to the body. We also have articulation in the legs, which can go forward and back. And then we have a swivel tail as well. And that's about it, I think. There's no other articulation. You don't have any jaw articulation, neck articulation, nothing like that. But again, that's pretty much also the standard when it comes to these figures. For a length you were looking at, I'd say just shy of actually 6 inches. They're always consistently called the 5-inch basics, but they're closer to 6 inches actually, or about the 15 centimeter range, maybe a little bit over. In the length department, and for a height, you're looking at a little over 2¼ inches, or around 6 centimeters, maybe approaching 2½ inches, but not quite. For a size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Colovosaurus, and Robert Muldoon from the Mattel Jurassic World toy line in comparison to our 5-inch or 6-inch, however you want to term it, basic Giganotosaurus for the Jurassic World Dominion line. And I think this definitely helps to give you a pretty good idea of the fact that the figure is very small. It's just in general, these figures are always really small, and it seems to fit exactly in the same size range as all of the previous figures in this line. So if you have any of the previous 5-inch basics, you'll definitely know roughly what the size is. But if not, especially if you are a Mattel collector, then Robert Muldoon and the Colovosaurus over here should help you out greatly when it comes to figuring out the size of this figure. For another comparison, here is one of the Mattel minis. We've got the Mattel Mini Ceratosaurus here in comparison to the Giganotosaurus, showing you that they're not quite mini figures, but at the same time they still kind of qualify, I would say, as mini figures. And then for another comparison, here is a Captives Jurassic World Velociraptor Blue in comparison to the Giganotosaurus, again showing you these are what I consider mini figures. You can see this one's obviously a little bit bigger, but still within the realm kind of a mini figure. And then for one final comparison, if you are a collector of Jurassic World toys, but not so much when it comes to the Mattel line, but might be interested in the Giganotosaurus, here is the Kenner Young Tyrannosaurus Rex in comparison to the Giganotosaurus here, the 5-inch basic version. Again, showing you that it is a really quite small figure, but super impressive in the sculpting and detailing aspect considering its size. So what better way to start the Jurassic World Dominion reviews than with the antagonist of the film, we've got the Giganotosaurus. That's a great way to start, I think, and it's definitely a fun figure. I actually love the 5-inch basics, and they're usually impossible to find in my area. So when I had heard Aldi actually had them, I rushed straight to mine the moment they opened this morning to try to grab them. Again, I'm really disappointed that I didn't get the Therizinosaurus. It was not there, but I'm really happy that I at least got one. There was also the Velociraptor Blue there, but I believe that's the same figure that we've had prior, so I wasn't too interested in picking that one up. I really only want to get the ones that I don't have, which would be the Giga and the Therizinosaurus. And the Giganotosaurus is actually really quite nice, and seeing how nice it is has me really interested in picking up the Therizinosaurus now, because I'm sure that one is beautiful as well. But again, sculpt-wise, it's absolutely awesome. There's a lot of detail crammed into such a small figure, making it extremely impressive when it comes to the detailing aspect. It looks nice and screen accurate to what we've seen so far of the Giganotosaurus, and the coloration is okay. Again, it looks like the Giga as far as what we've seen so far in the films, but there's just, your standard when it comes to Mattel as far as the paint application. You have paint that stops before the tail, not too much going on, basically, no nail paint, and of course we have the horrible placement of the eyes, which is something that literally has been happening since the line began for Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom. Hopefully someday they get that under control and we can start to get figures without that, but even still, again, I'm intending on repainting one at some point, or just maybe applying more paint to it to kind of give it a better look, and that's why I purchased two, so hopefully the eye on the other one isn't quite as bad as what we see on this one. But once you exclude the misplaced eye and look at the figure as a whole, I think it's definitely a really fun Giganotosaurus, a pretty fun addition to the Jurassic World line, and I'm really happy that I was actually able to get a hold of at least one of these 5-inch basic figures, because they're an absolute nightmare normally for me to get a hold of, and unfortunately my Aldi was almost sold out when it comes to these figures, so they'll be very hard to find moving forward for me, so I'm really happy that I did have a chance to actually grab the Giganotosaurus. Now, fingers crossed, I can score the Therizinosaurus at some point soon. If you are interested in picking this up again, make sure you head to your local Aldi's as soon as you can before they sell out. Like I said, mine was running really low on these when I got there, so it's best to get there as soon as possible. One of the reasons why I wanted to get this review up immediately for anybody interested to get there and get a hold of them before they're gone. So make sure you do that. Make sure you also like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.